Lands. We're here to talk about lands. So, hello everyone, it is Matt here from Scoop in Response, and today we're going to be looking at another deck tech for a new commander that has come out with Dominaria United. I'm really excited about this commander, and I have put something together that I am sure no one else is going to be thinking about building a commander like this. It's a very weird deck. You're going to have to just go with it until you kind of understand what's going on. It's a lot of weird kind of things happening all at once, and it's just going to look like a big hot mess of a deck until we start to see that it all makes sense. So we'll have a look at the commander first and foremost. Soul of Windgrace. He's a Jund commander, 1 and black, red, green. Whenever Soul of Windgrace enters the battlefield or attacks, you may put a land card from a graveyard onto the battlefield tapped under your control. So obviously we're going to be doing something with lands, but really it comes down to what it is that we are doing. Now, there are a lot of weird and wonderful things that you can do across formats with lands, and unfortunately, the nature of Commander means that a lot of the cool strategies that we get to employ aren't actually that useful in Commander. If you wanted to look at a, kind of like a Ponza style deck, which is popular in Modern, or a Taxes style deck in Modern and Legacy, they all they do is they control the lands, they stop you from searching, they stop you from being able to play lands, they blow up your lands, all of those kinds of things. Just doesn't work in Commander. Now, we're not going to go and do that. We're not going to go and do mass land destruction either. It's just one of the many examples of things that you can't do. Valakut is another great example where you can't really Valakut for the win. Scape shifting, it's just so hard in terms of the number of actual lands that you would need to trigger in order to kill the 120 damage worth of damage that your opponents are going to have in a Commander game. So with this, we're going to be looking at some, I guess, a bit unique, a bit different in terms of how we're going to construct our deck. So the other thing that our commander has is we've got 3 activated abilities. So green, discard a land, you gain 3 life, always useful. 1 and a red, discard a land card, draw a card. And then 2 and a black, discard a land card. Soul of Windgrace gains indestructible until end of turn, tap it. Now, for the most part, what we are going to be interested in is the second ability, which is the drawing a card. And that's going to work with one of the cards in particular in this deck that's quite useful. So I mentioned that we're going to be doing something that's a bit weird, a bit different. And basically, we are going to be playing a deck that is all about only 3 cards in our list. So we're going to be playing 99 cards. But realistically, we're going to be playing 3 cards in our deck. And those 3 cards are the following: Seismic Assault, Life from the Loam, and Manabond. Seismic Assault reads, discard a land card. Seismic Assault deals 2 damage to any target. Life from the Loam reads, return up to 3 target land cards from your graveyard to your hand, dredge 3. And Manabond reads, during your discard phase, you may choose to put all lands from your hand into play. If you do, discard the rest of your hand. So realistically, if we were to have an opening hand with all 3 of these cards, that's pretty much it. That's the whole deck done. But that is an unrealistic expectation to have. We're never going to reliably get all 3 of those cards in our hand. Now, the other way that you might be thinking, oh, we'll just put all of these, tutors into the deck and we're going to just really aggressively go ham on tutoring for these targets. And while this deck definitely does have tutors in it, it's going to work within a framework that is a little bit different. So the idea is this: we've got a whole bunch of lands in our hand, and we want to be using them to shoot our opponents in the instance of Seismic Assault. We're going to get those lands in our hand with Life from the Loam, because each turn we're going to be dredging, and then we're going to be casting Life from the Loam to get 3 land cards from our graveyard and put them back onto into our hand. And then we've got Manabond, which is during your discard phase, you can choose to put all lands from your hand into play. So realistically, we could be getting 4 or 5 or 6 lands a turn, but that's obviously not that sustainable unless we've got the engine going. So you can start to see where things are kind of getting a bit interesting. Manabond discarding your hand is quite relevant. There's not a lot of things that we can be doing if we're going to be playing Hellbent for the most of the game. Now, it is a May ability, so that's super useful as well. But the reality of the situation is we want to basically be dumping our hand into our graveyard each turn, because we're going to be using Cascaders to cascade into those 3 cards. So there's a total of 7 Cascades that worked for this type of list in these colors. So we're going to be playing all 7 of them. There's a few extra things that you could run if you wanted. I think the Assault Apex Allosaurus or whatever it is. It's a 10 drop or a 12 drop or something like that, and it's really big. It's just got Cascade. Realistically, if you're at the mana to cast that, you've probably got all the pieces that you need for the combo anyway, so there's no point in including that in the deck. By all means, if you want to stick it in, you can definitely include that. So we've got these 7 spells. So with the 3 important spells that we see here, we've got another 7 spells that are really useful at getting those cards, and you can start to see we're getting a density of cards where it actually makes us possible to mulligan. And so what we've got here in the Cascades, if you look at the mana value, we've got all of these 5 drops, 4 drops, and 3 drop mana Cascade spells, and the actual 6 as well. So if that's the case, we can't really be playing any spells in our deck that cost less than 5 mana, because if we do that, it's going to interrupt the combo, right? So our deck will be entirely comprised of cards that are 5 CMC and above, but we also want them to do something when they're in the graveyard. So given that we've got these 7 cards here and the 3 cards that we want access to, that's only 10 cards, so there's still a lot of chaff, so to speak, in the deck. So we've got to find a way to make these a bit more consistent. So these are our Cascade targets. So you see the original 3 that we've got here. We've got the Seismic Assault, we've got the Life from the Loam, and the Manabond. We've also got Eternal Witness and Timeless Witness. Now, Eternal Witness and Timeless Witness are great because they're going to be able to get us back our previously cast Cascade spells, which is really useful. And it's also going to let us just get useful cards from our graveyard as well. So maybe it might be one of the other cards that you see on the screen here, the Imperial Seal, Demonic Tutor, the Vampiric Tutor, and the Gamble. Now, it's super important to note, we are not a CDH list. These tutors here, they are in place of so many other deck building constraints that we have created for ourselves. So if you're looking at this list so far and you see these, the 3 black tutors, and you think, oh man, this is way too high power for me, I promise you this list has so many things that are going to bring it back down into that fun space for you. So while it will be quite, I guess the combo of these tutors, they're quite expensive, and typically speaking, you would imagine them to be, for high power decks. I would really thoroughly encourage you to have a rule 0 conversation if you're ever going to play this deck, just because people will think you're doing things that are going to be much more powerful than they are. There's no Ren and 6s, there's no Azuses for multiple land drops, we're not doing anything weird and wacky, we're not going to be getting, Dockside Extortionists or anything like that. We are purely lands. So with that said, we've got these 9 cards here, plus our 7 here. We're getting up to 16 cards that are actually useful in starting to assemble the combo of those 3 cards. Now, there are a few exceptions for cards in this list. We have 3 cards in particular that don't conform to the rule, but every other card in our deck is going to be useful from the graveyard, and it's also going to be above 5 CMC. So basically there's no dead cards. There's no possible way for you to cast a Cascade spell and then we brick off of something. There is one additional 1 black and red card that is it's basically a targeted spell, and I've not included it in the list because it can fizzle and then you won't be able to you're just going to bust out basically if something happens to it, and it can't be disrupted. It can be disrupted rather. So the 3 exception cards we've got are Escape to the Wilds, Jaheira's Respite, and Hour of Promise. And those cards are, all they are there to do is to basically ramp us, so they're giving us an additional collection of cards that are going to be useful for the actual game. And so The CMC of being 5 is actually quite relevant because you know, that sort of gives us at worst case, you know, we've got these, I think it's 19 cards in total. We're not going to be ramping, so at least if we draw these at that time, we're going to have something to do on turns 4, something to do on turns 5 at the very worst. So we, you know, worst case scenario, we're taking the first 3 turns off. So yeah. Now with all of that said, let's have a look at all of the cards that fit into this deck where we have utility. Now, there are going to be some shitters here. We've got a whole range of different cards. Indulge and Excess. Now we get around this because the Cascade is on the stack. You know, this will count as a 5-drop until we actually Cascade and cast it. We've got Beast Attack, you know, another 5-drop. Create a 4/4 green beast token. So as you can see with these two, we're creating a 1/1 green white citizen creature token that's tapped and attacking whenever we attack this turn. We've got a 4/4 beast. So these cards, these are not powerful cards. These are absolutely rubbish cards. But they have flashback, they have aftermath, so it means that if we discard them with Manabond, they go into the bin and then we can do something useful with them. We've got Creeping Renaissance. Choose a permanent type, return all cards of the chosen type from your graveyard to your hand. So you can imagine what that looks like if we've been dredging all game and there's a whole bunch of lands in the bin, and we basically get all of our lands back and then we can put them into play under our control. We've got Diagraph Rebirth. This is a way to return a creature, so maybe our commander, or it could be, you know, a whole number of different things. Return a creature that died. Return a creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. So just a way to recur creatures in that respect. Increasing Ambition. It's a 5-mana demonic tutor that's a little bit better. When you cast it from your graveyard for 8, you can go and get 2 cards. So yeah, it's really fairly costed. If you want to play for 2 Diabolic Tutors in 1, you know, you're more than welcome to. Got Parallel Evolution. For each creature token in play, its controller puts a creature token that's a copy of that creature. So we've got a number of creatures that are in the deck, you know, already, and this is just going to be, creature tokens. So we're just populating in effect. Savage Conception, we're going to put a 3/3 green beast token into play. Now, the critical factor with this is you'll notice it's not flashback, it is retrace. And so that means we discard a land card and then we can cast this for 5 mana every time we want. So you might be able to start to see the semblance of an engine here. So we're going to look to play basically Hellbent the entire game. And what that means is we're not going to be playing with any cards in our hand, you know, and we're going to be discarding everything, maybe with the exception of those 3 cards that we discussed earlier. We're going to be playing Hellbent for the whole game. And all we're going to be doing is dredging more things into the bin, and we're going to be discarding lands, and we're going to be casting spells, and we're going to be doing all kinds of weird and wonderful things with that. And that is pretty much the idea. So we've sort of seen all of the mechanics now. We've got Seize the Storm, creates another token. It has power and toughness equal to the number of instants and sorceries in our graveyard, which we're not going to have that many of. We've got Spider Spawning, another token generator. Worm Harvest, this is a really great card in this list. It's because it's got retrace. So we get to put a black and green worm creature token onto the battlefield for each land that's in our graveyard. So you can imagine just how many we can do with that. So this is a bit of a win con. You know, you cast this twice, and you know, if we have 15 lands in the bin, it's just going to be absolutely monstrous. Road to Ruin, it's a ramp spell, so super sweet. We can actually play a ramp spell in the list. Really awesome. Search for a basic land, put it on the battlefield, tapped, then shuffle. And then it's got the aftermath of destroying or dealing damage to a target creature equal to the number of lands we control. We're going to have a lot of lands. We've got Storm the Festival. This is a bit of a Pioneer All-Star, bit of a standard All-Star. You just look at the top 5, put 2 permanent cards with mana value 5 or less from among them onto the battlefield, put the rest onto the bottom of the library in a random order, and it has flashback. Most of the time this is going to be 2 lands. It's honestly there. I don't even think there's many targets on top of it. You get a Bloodbraid Elf, but because you haven't cast it, you're never going to be doing that. Yeah, it's pretty much the exception of Timeless Witness, Seismic Assault, and Eternal Witness are probably the only ones you'd be picking. You'd probably take Manabond as well. So, you know, 4 out of the 99 is probably not that high. It's going to be, yeah, a land most of the time. Never destroy target creature and then exile target card from a graveyard as the aftermath. You make a token. Roar of the Worm, we're making more tokens. Army of the Damned, more tokens, a lot more, 13 to be precise. Crush of Worms, put 3 6/6 worms into play. These cards, they're just so awful, they're just terrible, but it's so funny in this list that, you know, we're going to be putting this rubbish card into the bin, and it's actually useful because we are just going to be ramping so hard, and there's none of these clean payoffs, there's none of this, like, you know, lean and mean, you know, opportunity to do broken things. No, we're going to be playing honest Richard Garfield magic. We're going to make vanilla 6/6s. We're going to slam them into our opponent's faces. The last card that we've got is Worldbreaker in terms of graveyard utility, and it is a cast trigger. You can exile an artifact, enchantment, or a land. It has reach, but it's got 2 and a colorless, sacrifice a land, return Worldbreaker from your graveyard to your hand. So very cool that you can recur that from the graveyard. Now, there are a few other cards that would be really useful to put in a deck like this. One that comes to mind is Blightsteel Colossus, because it only shuffles itself into the graveyard, into the library from the graveyard. So when you think about the Eldrazi's, it would make sense that we'd want to ramp to a you know, huge amount of mana and then cast an Eldrazi. But the problem is when we mill them, we actually do all of the we undo all of the work that we have done by putting cards into our graveyard, because they shuffle the whole graveyard into our deck. So yeah, in terms of Blightsteel Colossus being useful, I would definitely say it's a great card to put in this deck, but it kind of doesn't really work with the theme. You know, if you're just wanting to ramp into a Blightsteel Colossus and kill people that way, there are plenty of other decks for that. We're not about that. We're about making stupid tokens. We're going to shoot people with all of our lands and everything like that. Now, with that said, we haven't actually looked at that many cards. So we've had a look at about 20, oh gosh, about maybe 25 to 30 total cards. Hopefully all of that makes sense in terms of what we're doing. Yeah, it's pretty straightforward, but seeing as we've only looked at 30 cards, I'm sure you can guess what else we've got left with the list. And that's our lands, which there are 63 of. So it's a nice low number for this kind of deck. No, it's 63 lands, and we have absolutely every single useful land that you could possibly imagine. Now, while we're looking at this, it's worth noting, yes, this deck is about $4,000 to build if we were going to build this with all of these cards. Now, I would say that you 100% do not need to have all of the dual lands, the Guy's Cradles, all of the fetch lands, everything like that. And I've actually got a budget version of this deck, which the entire total deck cost comes in at about $280. Now, I know it's not the most budget list, but given that a number of the, I guess, those cards that are just absolute must-haves for this list, so Life from the Loam, Manabond, you know, that's $40 between the two of them. There's quite it's quite a number of cards that are not particularly cheap. So I'll have a link for the budget version of the list in the description of this video. But yeah, we're looking at about $2,800 to $3,000 worth of lands right now. So we will go over them. We've got Ancient Tomb, which is just a good land for acceleration. You know, you can make 2 colorless instead of just the 1 regular. We've got all of our fetch lands. We've got all the dual lands. We've got our cycling for 1 lands. So that's Barren Moor. It is Sheltered Thicket. Well, Sheltered Thicket's actually a different one. It's a 2 mana cycler. We've got Tranquil Thicket, and the other one will come to me when we get to it. So got that. We've got Blast Zone, just a great way to you know, deal with 1-drops and all of that kind of things. Just be careful not to blow up your own mana bond when you're doing it. We've got the Shocklands, Blood Crypt, everything like that. Bojuka Bog, it's just a great utility land for exiling graveyards. Now the other thing as well is, in having a Rule 0 conversation, it's definitely worth mentioning, this deck is basically going to fall apart if you get your Life from the Loam or other key pieces exiled. You know, you're still going to have some play, but it's going to be a long and hard game. So make sure that you're sort of making friends. You definitely don't want to be copying your own Bojuka Bog to your graveyard. You don't want to be getting exiled graveyards. Hopefully the people that you're playing with appreciate the lengths that you've gone to make sure that your deck isn't too strong, and that they will be more than happy to just let you keep your engine, even if it is you know, going to result in you getting some pretty crazy value. Beseiju is destroy artifact enchantment on non-basic land. Most of the time you just want to use it to blow up something that's you know, going to hurt you in a big way, maybe some kind of enchantment or something like that, a Blood Moon, back to basics, something like that. Cabal Coffers, and we've also got the Urborg, just so that we can have this being a absolutely enormous land, you know, that we tap for, you know, 10 or 15 mana if we need to. It's got all these cycling lands that are the dual lands that cycle, so Canyon Slow, Sheltered Thicket, everything like that. We've got the castles, so Castle Lochthwain, and I believe we're also running, no, we're not running the other two, so yeah. Cinderglade, which is just a fetchable target for mountains and forests, and mountains will be quite relevant. We've got Cryptic Caves, stack more salvage, you know, Cryptic Caves, you draw a card, you can sacrifice it. It's just another way to draw cards, so very exciting. In a pinch, you can use this to sort of draw a card and then replace it with the dredge from Life from the Loam, much the same as you can do that with your commander. This is just slightly cheaper, so yeah, being able to sack, draw, replace the draw with a dredge, and at least that way you'll get to preserve your Life from the Loam if someone is going to be exiling your graveyard, so you can effectively stop them from doing that. Dackmore Salvage is a bit of a win con in some decks. It's just value in ours. We're just going to be dredging it and using it to dredge in that respect. Dark Depths, we got no way of making this anything cheaper other than the Thespian Stage combo. So we've got that, it's pretty sweet. So yeah, basically you have the Dark Depths in play, and then you play a Thespian Stage, and you use it to become a copy of Dark Depths. Because the Thespian Stage is already entered into the battlefield, it doesn't have any counters on it when it's transformed into Dark Depths. You legend rule them out, the original Dark Depths goes away, and then you flip your Thespian Stage into a 2020 indestructible Marit Lage, which is really cool. Den of the Bugbear, it's just a manland. It's kind of like a Goblin Rabblemaster in a manland. Drownyard Temple, this is just for when you want to sacrifice, you know, a land, and then you want to return it back to the grave, to the library, to your far out battlefield. We'll get there eventually. I'll choose the right zone. So really weird, really slow engine for the most part, but I kind of like it, given that you can just, you know, always have access to it. Really fun. Field of the Dead, it's just a win con. We're going to be making lots of blockers, lots of zombies for every time a land comes into play. Worth noting as well, if say 5 or 6 lands with different names all come in and it sort of happens in one instance, Field of the Dead will see all of them if it's coming into play with them, and so you can make like 5 or 6 you know, mana. There's going to be weird situations where you can, like on turn 2, play a Manabond and then, you know, 5 lands, and it will, where it will actually just trigger and you'll get like 10 zombies straight away or 5 zombies straight away. So very cool with that. Forest, Forgotten Cave. Forgotten Cave is just another cycling land. Guy's Cradle, you're going to make lots of tokens, so you're going to have the ability to use this to add for a lot of mana. Ghost Quarter, we've got some light land destruction. You can recur it obviously with this deck, so very cool. Glacial Chasm, so cumulative upkeep to life. So what you want to do with this one is you want to just keep casting it each turn from your graveyard, and it's like a soft lock, so you just choose not to recast it. You choose not to pay the upkeep, and then you play it from your graveyard by dredging it and getting it back and using it as your land drop, and you're basically indestructible at that point. So really fun way of doing it. Don't abuse it, because you know, people will start attacking your graveyard and start to play around if you become, you know, enemy number one. Highland Forest, just a tapped dual land that's snow. Hive of the Eye Tyrant, it's just a man land. Same with Lair of the Hydra. We've got Lotus Field. There's lots of payoffs for having lands in the bin, so we just use this to make a hexproof land that taps for 3 mana, so really sweet there. Marsh Flats, yeah, just more fetch lands. Maze of Ith, this is just great for, you know, extra defense, because we want all the utility in our lands. So basically having Maze of Ith and things like that, we get to basically stop, you know, our opponent's commander coming in and swinging. You can even copy it with a Thespian Stage or a Vesuva, because it's not legendary. So you can have 2 or 3 Mazes of Ith, and you can be just stopping everything, you know, so stopping each commander every turn and going from there. Got some mountains, Misty Rainforest, Nurturing Peatland, just another land that draws cards. We've got Raging Ravine, which is a man land. Now, important to note, you can multiple activate this ability, and every time you activate it, it will put a 1/1 counter on it for each activation. So really cool in that respect, and the counters will stay on it, so you could just activate it 10 times if you've got, you know, 40 mana, and then it'll get 10 counters on it, and it'll stay there, and then at the end of turn, it'll stop and become a land again, and yeah, but you'll get to keep those counters. Yeah, so some more color access. So we've got Sheltered Thicket, Smoldering March, got the snow-covered lands. So it's important to note that snow-covered lands and the regular version, so snow-covered swamp and swamp, they have different names, and that's relevant for Field of the Dead, so that's why we've split them into the 2 there. Soken'Zan, it's just a channel land, very cool there. Strip Mine, we've also got Wasteland in here. It's just 2 ways to destroy basic and non-basic and then target lands. Takenuma, another channel land. We've spoken about Thespian Stage and Tranquil Thicket and Urborg. Now Valakut is another one that's really useful. You know, you're never going to be able to do like a Scape Shift combo, but if you've got enough mountains, which you'll eventually get to, you can start to sort of shoot people and just recur a few mountains each turn, and you'll sort of go from there. It's not going to be a primary win con. Maybe if you manage to get the Thespian Stage and the Vesuva as copies of Valakut, you can have 3 of them, and then you can be doing 9 damage per mountain a turn. That's kind of cool, but yeah, otherwise it'll be a little bit tricky. Volrath Stronghold, add 1 colorless mana to your mana pool, or put a target creature card from your graveyard on top of your library. So really, really strong there. If there's just something like, you know, you want to put your Bloodbraid Elf, or you would like to put your Eternal Witness back on the top, because we've got so few actual cards in the deck, we want to take care of the ones that we have. So yeah, Wasteland, Windswept Heath, Wooded Foothills, Yavimaya, and Ziatora's Proving Ground, so the Tri-Land or the Triome or whatever you would like to call it. That is pretty much the deck. So yeah, it's a really interesting way to build the list. Like, I don't think I've ever sort of been able to work out how to make something quite as clean as this for lands. It's obviously totally ridiculous, and you would definitely be able to make a stronger version of this list if you aren't obsessed with the idea that we've got to just have all of these you know, cards have to sort of fit into these rules. And so I thought with this one, the most important thing is the thematic idea. You know, we can all go and build a powerful Jund commander that does Jundy things. You know, Korvold is probably a better lands commander if you build him just to be strong and have like lots of extra land drops than maybe Soul of Windgrace could be. And Korvold has nothing to do with lands, really, just sacrificing creatures, sacrificing permanents and drawing cards. So yeah, all in all, I'm really excited for the prospect of cards like Soul of Windgrace to come into Standard and Pioneer, but in Commander, it's just really sick to be able to build something. You know, we've got an engine in the command zone, but it's not just a completely broken engine in the command zone, you know, like something like Corvold or Tulane or Kenrith or something like that. You know, we've got to sort of make some things happen. We've got to actually actively look to make these things happen. So it's pretty cool. I really hope you enjoy this list. Is there anything that I've missed? I've tried to find so many ways of, you know, recurring, you know, things from the graveyard. I looked at like Jumpstart, I looked at Cascade, Eternalize, I looked at, I couldn't think of anything else. Flashback, obviously, but if there's any other mechanics that I've missed, I'd love to hear what you have to say about that. But yeah, other than that, thank you so much for checking out the video. It's really awesome to sort of get so much content out. Dominaria United has just been so good with regards to the amount of cool ideas that you can sort of build into for Commander. Hope you enjoyed the video, and if you liked it, you feel free to send me a sub and a like and all of that, and I'll see you for the next one. Bye for now.